Hare Krishna, all the devotees, welcome to our program on the Nectar of Devotion, which is the book written by ISKCON's founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This book is a summary study of another book by one of the most revered Vaishnava Acharyas in our Sampradaya, Srila Rup Goswami, titled as Bhaktir Samrat Sindhu. So we are studying both Nectar of Devotion together with Bhaktir Samrat Sindhu. It's a combination of both the books. Today we will be focusing on chapter number 16, the title of which is Spontaneous Devotion Further Described. This is our 18th class on this particular subject, Nectar of Devotion. Mangalacharan prayers. Rakesh ji was supposed to recite Mangalacharan prayers.
I can do it, Prabhuji, no problem.
Okay, Jivan Prabhu volunteering. So Prabhuji, thank you very much. Kindly recite the Mangalacharan. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Ajnanatimrandasya jnananjanashalakaya चक्षुरुर्मिलिताम्येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्री गुरु श्रीयुतपाद कमलं श्री गुरु वैष्णवांश्च श्री रूपं साग्रजातं सह गणदेवतान् रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजन सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सह गण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपीश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण Prabhuji, thank you very much. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much, Jivan Prabhuji. Very nicely chanted. Thank you. Okay. Now I would request Manish ji, Manish Kulkarni ji from Singapore to kindly present the summary of previous class. Manish Prabhu, for some reasons, was not able to attend previous 4 classes, but he took all the time to once again see the recording of these classes and was able to prepare the summary of the previous class. I really appreciate Manish Prabhu's effort, enthusiasm. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much, and good evening, and good evening to all the devotees also. So I think till last few classes we were discussing about Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and I think we completed this Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and we discussed all about the limbs of Bhakti, the relationship, and all these things. But from chapter 15, this is a new topic which we started discussing from last week, that is Raganuga Bhakti, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Yeah, and then the chapter states that the spontaneous devotional service. So Sadhana Bhakti has two divisions, as we said, Vaidhi Sadhana and Raganuga Sadhana. Yeah? The definition of Raganuga Bhakti is mentioned like the Bhakti which is distinctly found. Yeah. Okay. So definition of Raganuga Bhakti following in the footsteps of Ragatmika Bhakti. So in Raganuga Bhakti, there is also a term which is defined as Ragatmika Bhakti. And once we are following the footsteps of Ragatmika Bhakti, it leads to nothing but the Raganuga Bhakti. So that is what we need to understand first. What is Ragatmika Bhakti? Yeah. So the definition of Ragatmika Bhakti, it is still that Bhakti impelled by natural, intense or spontaneous attraction. Yeah. Something like if we are very thirsty, then that we want to have this thirst clear. So that is something, a spontaneous reaction. And that is what typically found in the residents of Vraja. Vraja means Vrajavasi, means the residents of Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. So we have also learned in the past about the Vrajas, how they are very eagerly loving Krishna, how they want to serve the Lord, and how they find the pleasure in serving the Lord. So that is something like a spontaneous or intense kind of attraction or the thirst, which is defined here. Yeah, next, yeah. So Raga plus Atmika is nothing but Ragatmika, one whose Atma is intense thirst. Yeah. So nothing, Ragatmika is nothing but it is same like a Prema Bhakti. So there is no big difference between Ragatmika Bhakti or the Prema Bhakti. So this is what it says. Raga plus Anuga is the follower of Ragatmika Bhakti. Yeah. Next one. Yeah. So then we discussed about these two types of Ragatmika Bhakti. One was Kamarupa, that is nothing but impelled by conjugal feelings. And second one was Sambandharupa, that is something related to family relationship, like a desire to satisfy the Lord as his parent or a friend. So we discussed this conjugal feeling and then the familial feeling. And then what are the possible ways to attain Krishna? Yeah, it is only because of the absorption. We need to completely somehow or other absorb the mind in Krishna. Even if we have any lust, fear, envy, affection, devotion, that can be also accepted, but it may attain the same results, but the sins to attain is the same. Yeah, this is many often given up their sins to attain the same end, but further it is described that the ending might be different for the lust and fear, envy, and affection and devotion. The ending might be different. The examples of possible ways to attain Krishna is defined by various ways, like gopis. We have seen gopis dancing with Lord, the Kamsa. The Kamsa is nothing but the, I would say, the mama of Lord Krishna. Then Shishupal, the affection is defined by the Pandavas, how they were affected or they had a good relation, the friendship relation with Krishna, the Lord, and then the Narada. So this is what are the typical examples how everybody try to achieve the Krishna or try to absorb Krishna in their mind. Next one, yeah. So fear and envy are typically ruled out as part of the Ragatmika Bhakti because of unfavorable attitudes. Yeah. So typically fear and envy are not favorable for this kind of a bhakti. Affection may or may not depends on mixed with awe or reverence. So affection, somebody might be a full affection. So again, it may be favorable also, or it may be not favorable, depending upon the quality or depending upon the awe and reverence of the person. Yeah. And then we talked about this mundane lust, the Kam Rupa Bhakti. So typically people misunderstand about this mundane lust, which is nothing but it is for our self-enjoyment or personal enjoyment. Yeah. And the spiritual lust is nothing but 100% selfless, and it is only to serve the Lord. Yeah. And you find pleasure in serving the Lord. So this is the big difference between the mundane kama versus the transcendental kama. And the driving force in mundane lust is our own selfish enjoyment, whereas the transcendental love, the driving force is to give pleasure to the Lord or to serve the Lord. Yeah. The use of word kama is simply to understand the transcendental situation. It doesn't mean that kama here means something related to what you can say. People try to misunderstand by the word kama, but here it is perfectly spiritual or completely transcendental. Yeah. So we should not take in the other way the relation of kama here. And the Krishna love affairs are impeccably transcendental. And then we also learned in the past some of the classes when Prabhuji also explained about the gopis and the Krishnas playing flute, dancing with them. And even when the Krishna tries to hide there, the gopis are so eager to see Krishna. So that kind of relationship is mentioned here, and it is a completely transcendental relationship. Yeah. Evidence of purity of spiritual lust, Uddhava aspiring prema of gopis, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a strict sannyasi, praised gopis' love for Krishna. So this is how the spiritual lust, which is defined here. Yeah. And then there is one more example of Kubja, a lady, to contrast with the pure selfless love of gopis. The gopis typically had the transcendental love, whereas this lady had some material love for the Lord. And there is why there is a difference which is clearly mentioned about the Kubja and the gopis here. Yeah. Prabhu, I thought
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have done my
Yes.
best, but you
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
anything I
Yeah.
miss, please cover me up.
No, you did a very good job. I really appreciate, specifically since you missed few classes, so I can understand to once again come back to the track and do justice would be a challenge, but I think you made a very good attempt. I like to just to uh, add a little stress on certain points here, which I think Prabhu uh, could have added a little more stress while presenting the summary. I'll just explain couple of things a little second time.
Yeah.
Now, when we are talking about possible ways to attain absorption, there are 5 of them have been listed, like lust, fear, envy, affection, and devotion. Now, when we read them, the very first reading, we find that affection and devotion sound to be in the positive light, and lust, fear, and envy find in negative light. Then Srila Rup Goswami, what he does is he gives this reference from Srimad Bhagavatam, that absorption, because absorption, this word absorption is actually coming from Ragatmika Bhakti. In Ragatmika Bhakti, actually there are 3 main uh, elements, which is it should be natural, this attraction towards the object of our love, which is Lord Krishna. It should be natural, it should be intense. Intense means it should be very strong, and spontaneous. Spontaneous means the moment we hear about Krishna, the moment we have uh, some stimulus about Krishna, it should be very spontaneous. The devotional action should be very spontaneous. We should not be hesitant at all, not thinking twice. So that is the nature of Ragatmika Bhakti. Now, this absorption, when we are talking of, which is natural, intense, and spontaneous, this could be in 5 particular areas, and here 2 are positive, 3 are negative, as it appears from the first reading. Out of these 3, fear and envy are ruled out, like Prabhu mentioned, because of unfavorable approach. But then the question remains, why we have not just removed this particular one, lust. Hmm? So uh, we will discuss it in a short while. But then with affection, as it is mentioned, it may or may not be ragatmika, fall under the category of ragatmika. So when it does not fall in the category of ragatmika, when the affection actually is mixed with awe and reverence. Awe and reverence means when you think somebody, if you are in a relationship with somebody and you see that individual with lot of awe and reverence, like with lot of great respect, then this natural, intense, and spontaneous attraction will not happen. Because if you are seeing somebody in awe and reverence, then what happens is that uh, that stature of the other person actually comes in between. Like for example, if devotees see Lord as somebody who is very very powerful, very great, and so on, then that natural love, intense and spontaneous attraction, love for the Lord, that will be actually shielded by that awe and reverence. So that is the idea. So in this category, there were 2 types of people discussed in the previous class. One was Pandavas, and the second were the Yadavas, or the Yadus, the Vrishnis, who were the family members of Lord Krishna. Then in that case, we discussed that Pandavas' affection for Lord Krishna will not fall in the category of Ragatmika. Why? Because Pandavas in general had this feeling of awe and reverence. Lord was very powerful. That kind of feeling they had. And I gave you one example also. If you, I mean, all of you have read Bhagavad Gita, and in Bhagavad Gita we see this chapter called Universal Form, chapter 11, where Arjuna is offering prayers in lot of awe and reverence. When Lord shows Arjun his universal form, the friendly relationship actually is lost. The relationship now is of oh, you are so great, like that kind of relationship is there. So that is how generally the Pandavas affection is filled with awe and reverence, so it doesn't categorize into the category of ragatmika. However, on the other hand, the Yadavas, the Vrishnis, who are the family members of Lord Krishna, or Vrajavasis other than the gopis, they had this feeling of affection. Like for example, many had this feeling of affection of Lord Krishna as his son. Some others had feeling of towards Lord Krishna as his friend. So that kind of affection will actually categorize into Ragatmika Bhakti. So these people who considered Lord Krishna as his son, or who considered Lord Krishna as his friend, they did not saw Lord Krishna as God. They saw Lord Krishna as their son. So out of their parenthood, they would sometimes chastise Krishna. They would sometimes behave like a father or a mother would behave. Similarly, in friendship also. So they would not think Lord Krishna as their friend, as God. They would consider Krishna as friend. So they will play with Krishna as if friends are playing. So while playing, they would make fun of Krishna. In playfully, they will pick meal from Krishna's tiffin, or they will wrestle with Krishna. So we, the Vedi bhaktas, will not think of something like that, to wrestle with Krishna. We don't think like that, right? So that is how it will fall under the category of ragatmika. So that's how we need to understand. Now remaining one is lust. So lust also sounds negative, but that is the clarification what Srila Rupa Goswami is giving. He's saying that the word calm actually is mainly to understand the transcendental situation. And what is this transcendental situation? The situation is that when we talk about this word calm, for people who are in this material world, they think calm to be a very consuming, very absorbing desire. But for the materialist, this calm is consuming and material desire or absorbing desire, uh, for selfish sense gratification, for one's own sense gratification. But in the case of gopis, in the case of the Vraj Gopikas of Vrindavan, this intensity is same, or even more than the intensity of calm we see in this material world, but it is selfless. So in order to emphasize upon the deep intensity of the attraction and absorption in that conjugal relationship of gopis, the word calm has been used. Just to give some idea to the materially conditioned soul that what kind of intensity this particular relationship has. But this intensity is there, however, in the opposite sense. Opposite sense means it is in the selfless sense, that to give that kind of love, that kind of service, that kind of pleasure to Lord in so much selflessly, but the intensity is so deep. So that is why the word calm has been used. So uh, that is, I think, those were the 2 points I wanted to give a little more emphasis. Prabhu actually explained it in general very well, but just to emphasize a little bit, I am just making these two important points. Okay, so now we continue with our journey on the class today, which is the chapter number 16. Uh, I'll once again take you to that particular slide, which I uh, try to mention to you where we are on this particular journey now. So this is chapter number 16. We just now finished chapter 15th, and here you will see in Bhakti Samrat Sindhu the chapter actually picks up from these verses in BRS. These are verses from 288 to 309. So roughly these are, I think, 22 verses, and we will base our discussion today on this chapter. This is the slide on chapter 2, which I always refer to you. And like the whole chapter 2 is classified here in these small boxes. And here we are now talking about sadhan bhakti. But in sadhan bhakti, which is type 2, the Raganuga sadhan bhakti is being discussed. And in this discussion, we started this discussion in our previous class, but in order to understand Raganuga Sadhan Bhakti, we have to first of all understand what is Ragatmika Bhakti. So the definition of Raganuga Sadhan Bhakti actually means following into the footsteps of those devotees who are Ragatmika Bhaktas. So now if the definition contains one term like Ragatmika, first of all we need to understand Ragatmika, then we need to develop on what is actually Raganuga Bhakti. So the previous class, chapter 15, was completely dedicated on understanding Ragatmika Bhakti. And now we continue with our journey after the previous class. Now in the previous class we discussed that Ragatmika Bhakti is of two types. One is Kama Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti, and another one is Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. Now, in Ragatmika Bhakti, I will repeat, we always need to understand these definitions by the very word this definition is explained. So, Ragatmika, one whose Atma is Rag. Rag means deep, intense attachment or thirst. One whose Atma, one whose very self actually is absorption and thirst for the object of love. So, in Kamarupa Ragatmika Bhakti, the flavor of that attraction and absorption is conjugal. In Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti, the flavor of that relationship is either in the mood of parent, or in the mood of a friend, or in the mood of a servant. So that is how Ragatmika Bhakti, Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti is defined. So till chapter 15, we had completed our discussion about Kama Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. But what was left behind was explanation of Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. So which Srila Prabhupada picks up in chapter number 16. In the beginning of chapter number 16, he picks up this Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti, explains the definition, and this actually corresponds to the verse number 288 in Bhakti Samrat Sindhu. I'll just read the definition. It is that bhakti inspired by great absorption arising from identifying oneself as the parent, friend, or servant of Krishna. This refers to the bhakti of the Vrajavasis in relationships other than conjugal love. So both the conjugal relationship as well as parent relationship, friendly relationship, servant relationship, all four are relationships, but they have identified the conjugal relationship separately and categorized it as Kama Rupa because it is actually very intense, very deep. So it is chief, it is king of all these type of Ragatmika Bhaktis. So because it is very special, it is chief, it has been separately classified as Kama Rupa. But all other relationships like parenthood, friendliness, and servitude has been classified all together under one umbrella known as Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. Now, so this is other than conjugal love. That is the main point. Then they also have a predominance of intense affection for Krishna, caused by lack of awareness of Krishna as God. So they don't consider Krishna as God. Like Mother Yashoda don't consider Krishna as God. Because if she consider Krishna as God, she cannot take stick and run after Krishna when he steals butter. She cannot do that. So they forget about it. They forget, and that also happens because of the Lord's Yog Maya potency. I have explained this Yog Maya and Mahamaya concepts also in the previous class. So Yog Maya is something which makes these devotees forgetful of their relationship with Krishna as God. Because if they keep that relationship in their mind that, oh, Krishna is God, then they cannot treat Krishna as his son or as their friend. That is not possible. So Gopis are the prime example of Kamrup Ragatmika Bhakti, and the other Vrajvasis are the chief examples of Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. So Gopis are also Vrajvasis, but other than Gopis, those Vrajvasis who consider Krishna or who see Krishna with the eyes of a parent or with the eyes of a friend or a servant, they would actually become uh, uh, chief examples of Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. And two examples are given here in this slide, Nanda and Yashoda. But there are many more examples, friends like Subala, Madhumangal. There are many of these which are actually fall into the category of Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. Now, we have discussed this point in our previous class where I mentioned that actually Ragatmika Bhakti is same as Prema Bhakti. Now, we are going to discuss Prema Bhakti when we are going to discuss Prema Bhakti in chapter number 19. So, we started our discussion on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in chapter 2 where we talked about Uttama Bhakti. Then Uttama Bhakti we described into three categories. One was Vaidhi, then second was Raganuga. Sorry, one was Sadhan Bhakti, then the second was uh, Bhava Bhakti, and the third one was the Prema Bhakti. Sadhan Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. So Prema Bhakti is the topmost level. So Ragatmika Bhakti and Prema Bhakti are no different. They are same. They are exactly same. So that is what uh, Rup Goswami himself is confirming in verse number 289 of Bhakti Samrat Sindhu. He's saying, since Kama Rupa Bhakti and Sambandha Rupa Bhakti exist only on the level of Prem and remain within the Nitya Siddhas, it is not discussed in this section thoroughly. So what Rup Goswami is trying to say, see why we started discussion of Ragatmika Bhakti, because we wanted to define Raganuga Bhakti. In the definition of Raganuga Bhakti, we had to take help of the word Ragatmika. And then the discussion started on Ragatmika Bhakti. So these are two types, Kamarupa and Sambandha. For Kamarupa, when the discussion came, the definition was given. And then Srila Rupa Goswami started describing about Kamarupa Ragatmika Bhakti from, or sorry, Ragatmika Bhakti reference was given from Srimad Bhagavatam. And then all that discussion continued. Now, once he has described these two types, Ragatmika Bhakti is of two types, Kama Rupa and Sambandha Rupa. Now, Rup Goswami is saying that actually Ragatmika Bhakti is same as Prema Bhakti. And we are not going to discuss this Ragatmika Bhakti, which is same as Prema Bhakti, more in this particular chapter. Because actually this chapter is mainly to explain about Raganuga Bhakti. So we will discuss about Ragatmika Bhakti, or which in other words, which is known as Prema Bhakti, at the right point of time when we are going to discuss about Prema Bhakti in detail. So that discussion from this point onwards, Kama Rupa and Sambandha Rupa, Ragatmika Bhakti, that discussion actually will now follow in chapter number 19. So before that, uh, what Rup Goswami is saying, that we stop our discussion about Prema Bhakti or Ragatmika Bhakti at this point in time, and we will continue and take it in chapter 19 of Nectar of Devotion, or in chapter number 4 of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There are 21 verses by Rup Goswami which is mainly discussing about Prema Bhakti, which is nothing but Ragatmika Bhakti. So primary subject matter of chapter 15 and 16 is to discuss practice of spontaneous devotion and not perfection of spontaneous devotion. So we need to understand the two words here. Practice of spontaneous devotion is Raganuga Sadhan. The practice of spontaneous devotion is Raganuga Sadhan. And perfection of spontaneous devotion is Ragatmika Prem. So when the Raganuga Sadhan is perfected, then actually it becomes Ragatmika Bhakti. It becomes Prema Bhakti. So that is what we need to understand. So practice of spontaneous devotion means Raganuga Bhakti, and perfection of spontaneous devotion means Ragatmika Bhakti. This is chapter 15 and 16 is mainly about Raganuga. So we continue to stop our discussion on Ragatmika here, and here from here on I will give you more details about Raganuga Bhakti. So now once we are primary foundational understanding of Ragatmika is clear, we now move to Raganuga Bhakti. So when describing about Raganuga Bhakti, first of all, Rup Goswami classifies into two parts. And the classification actually is identical to Ragatmika. exactly same. Two types of Raganuga Bhakti, Kamanuga Bhakti and Sambandhanuga Bhakti. Now, what was the classification is Ragatmika Bhakti? In Ragatmika, the classification was Kama Rupa Ragatmika and Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika. Here the classification is Kam Anuga and Sambandha Anuga. So the word Anuga means following into the footsteps. Following into the footsteps. And so what does the definition of Kamanuga means? Following into the footsteps of a Kamarupa Ragatmika Bhaktas. Those devotees who are following Kamarupa Ragatmika Bhakti, like gopis of Vrindavan, like Srimati Radharani. So those are the devotees who are under the category of Kamarupa Ragatmika. So Anuga, the word Anuga, as I mentioned, means following into the footsteps. So those sadhakas, those practitioners, those devotees who are trying to follow or who are trying to develop the same mood of Kama Rupa Ragatmikas are actually under the category of Kamanuga Bhaktas. Then the second one is like identical Sambandhanuga. So who these are devotees who are trying to follow into the footsteps of Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhaktas. Strive for the mood of Sambandha Rupa Ragatmikas. Example of Kamanuga, Gopis, Queen of Dwarka, Queens of Dwarka and Gopis. These are the because both are in the conjugal relationship. Both are in the conjugal relationship. And Sambandhanuga, here again the Vrajavasis in parental or friendly love. So some Gopa who is actually looking towards Krishna as his parent, or some another Vrajavasi who is in relationship with Krishna as friend. So that devotee who is following these devotees in Vraja uh, and trying to develop their mood in their sadhana, in their bhakti, actually will fall under the category of Sambandh Anuga Bhaktas. So these are two types of Raganuga Bhaktas. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami gives qualification for Raganuga Bhakti. What is the qualification? So there's a verse he writes here, 291. He's saying, Ragatmikaika nishtha ye vrajavasi janadayaha tesham bhava pataye lub tesham bhava pat tesham bhavaptaye lubdho bhaved atra adhikaravan bhaved atra adhikaravan. So he's saying Ragatmikaika nishtha ye vrajavasi janadayaha. What does it mean? Vrajavasis are fixed solely in Ragatmika Bhakti. So that we already know from our study of previous chapter that Vrajavasis are only pure bhaktas, they are Prima bhaktas and they are fixed solely in Ragatmika Bhakti. Ragatmika, I will once again repeat, whose Atma is Rag. And what is Rag? Intense, spontaneous, natural attraction or thirst for the object of love. So those are Vrajavasis. And then Tesham Bhavaptaye Lubdho Bhaved Atra Adhikarvan. What does it mean? One who is greedy for attaining a bhav similar to the Vrajavasis is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti. So here the main operating word is greedy. Greedy. Tesham bhavaptaye lubdho. Tesham bhavaptaye lubdho. Lubdho. So that is one who is greedy. So that greed or eagerness is evoked. How does this greed comes? This greed comes from uh, by hearing about the eternal residents of Vrindavan. So the qualification of Raganuga Bhakti as mentioned in this verse number 291 is that that particular devotee should be greedy to attain that bhav or mood of the Ragatmika Bhakta in Vraja. And if he is greedy, that greed is there, then he is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti. Now we will in short while we will contrast it with the Vedi Bhakti. So here this bullet is saying that how this greed comes. This greed comes by hearing by Shravanam about the eternal residents of Vrindavan. Like, for example, now if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, and in Srimad Bhagavatam, you read chapter in Canto 10, you read some chapter where there is a description about some friend of Lord Krishna, and there is a lot of elaborate explanation about what is the mood of that friend, how that friend actually relates with Lord Krishna. You will find it is so fascinating. You will develop a desire that I want to become like them. I want to become like this particular devotee in Vraj, in spiritual sky, in spiritual Vrindavan. I want to become like him. So that greed, that desire, that intense desire to become like that particular devotee actually is the qualification of Raganuga Bhakti. Huh? And how does this greed develop? As I mentioned, because of hearing and Shravanam. And what is the pace? Does this greed develops in a lump sum, or maybe it is gradual? Lump sum means, okay, today I was not having that greed, tomorrow I am having that greed in 100% quantity. No, it develops gradually, slowly it develops. Once you hear about that devotee, there is some attraction, there is some greed, or there is some desire, some eagerness actually develops in our heart. Or once we hear it again, or hear something else about that devotee, that eagerness still further increases. So there is a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee in Vraja. So there are two things. One is, how do we develop this? We develop this by hearing only. So this is no different than the limbs of Vaidhi Sadhan Bhakti. Shravanam is still there. Then it happens in a gradual way. It doesn't happen overnight, that you overnight you become something like 100% Raganuga Bhakta. No, it doesn't happen like that. Then in the next verse, Rup Goswami explains that what is how this Raganuga sadhan is different from Vaidhi sadhan bhakti. So we discussed about Uttam Bhakti, one of the type of Uttam Bhakti, Sadhan Bhakti. And in Sadhan Bhakti, we discussed Vaidhi Sadhan Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhan Bhakti. Now, one might be wondering, what is the difference between Vaidhi Sadhan and Raganuga Sadhan? Here it is the explanation given. That greed or eagerness of a Raganuga devotee is not dependent on rules of scriptures and logic. It is not dependent on rules. So when a devotee is following Vaidhi Bhakti, so there is fear. Oh, I need to chant certain number of rounds every day. If I don't chant, actually I will not complete my vow which I had made to my spiritual master, which I had made to myself or my guru or my senior devotee, etc., etc., or before the deity, etc., etc. So I should read every day 2 shlokas from Bhagavad Gita. That is my vow. That is my sadhana. But today I have not read. So there is some fear. And then if something we don't understand in scriptures, for example, uh, if there is some explanation about some katha is there, and there is some narration is going on, and one particular point we don't understand, then how do we understand? We try to understand it by discussion, by approaching certain person, that how it is possible. We apply our logic, we apply our intelligence to understand those things. So that is how the Vedhi sadhan bhakti goes on. So what is it is mentioned here is that greed of Raganuga devotee is not dependent on rules of scriptures and logic. Rules of scriptures means one should eat prasad, one should not make any uh, illicit relationship with another person, one should not gamble. Those are the rules, regulations given in the scriptures. Yeah? One should continuously chant Hare Krishna for a prescribed number of round, regularly chant. And logic is also there to understand the philosophy, to understand the details, etc. But it is due to realizing the sweetness of the love of Vrajavasis through the process of hearing from the scripture. So it is not dependent on rules, but it is realization comes that the sweetness of the love of Vrajavasis is there. So the Raganuga Bhakta actually gets attracted by the sweetness of the relationship between that particular Vrajvasi and Lord Krishna. Oh, what a sweet relationship! What a beautiful relationship! I also want to be with Krishna in that relationship. That greed, that attraction becomes main in heart. Now, when there is a feeling of love, when there is a feeling of sweetness in our heart, then it cannot be checked by logic. It cannot be checked by any rule. That love is there, that love is there. If you want to increase that love by logic, it cannot happen. If you want to stop that love by logic, it does not happen. So love has a different science. Love is different. So it is not based on scriptures and logic. It is simply because you like it. There's an attraction in your heart. So some people might say that might ask this question, that why do you like, say for example, Amitabh Bachchan? No, what do you mean by what do you like Amitabh Bachchan? I like him. Simply, I like him. The way he speaks, the way he walks, the way he narrates his dialogues. I just like him. You don't read a particular book to like Amitabh Bachchan. You don't go and read about a biography of Amitabh Bachchan. Although when you read biography of Amitabh Bachchan, you may develop some uh, attraction for Amitabh Bachchan. But if there is written in some scripture that one should like Amitabh Bachchan, so that regulation or that because it is written in the scripture, you don't simply develop that love for a particular person, isn't it? So that is the main difference, that in Raganuga Bhakti, greed or spontaneous attraction is the driving force, and that is the qualification for Raganuga Bhakti. Now, when we say not dependence on rules of scriptures and logic, so here there is something which we want to clarify, because people can misunderstand this. Here what it means, not dependent on rules, does not mean disregard of the rules or scriptures. That does not mean. So it does not mean that Raganuga devotee, uh, although there is a natural attraction, sweetness towards the sweetness of that relationship, but that does not mean that the Raganuga devotee start to disregard the rules or scriptures. So to at whatever stage in our devotional service, in our bhakti life we may be at a very advanced stage, maybe at the stage of bhava or even prema. Never the devotee shows disregard for the rules or scriptures. The point here is, not dependent on rules means the motivation is coming mainly from love and not from obligation. Obligation means that I have to chant 16 rounds every day. That is obligation. If there is, I may not feel like chanting, but there is an obligation on me to chant some prescribed number of rounds every day. So even if I like it, if I don't like it, I have to chant. But in the stage of Raganuga, there is love. I like to chant. Now, why 16? I will chant 24. I will chant 32. That kind of a attitude is there. But never there is a disregard for the rules or scripture is there. So that is we need to understand. So somebody might question uh, that how long a devotee follows scriptural rules, because for Vedi bhakti we need to follow scriptural rules. So Rup Goswami is making this clarification here in the next verse, 293. He's saying, those qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti are dependent on the rules of scripture and favorable use of logic until the appearance of Bhav Bhakti. Until the appearance of Bhav Bhakti. Raganuga develops the greed by studying the scriptures. It is also necessary to study the scriptures to understand the proper sadhana for Raganuga Bhakti. So, what it is being clarified here is that how in first place Raganuga devotee actually got attracted towards a particular devotee in Braja. It is only because he was following Vedi Bhakti previously. And while following Vedi Bhakti, he did Shravanam, he did some understanding or reading of the scriptures, and while reading the scriptures he came upon a particular devotee of Lord Krishna in the spiritual sky, and he got really attracted by these characteristics, or by his mood, and that's how he started developing that sweetness, or that attraction for that particular devotee. So Raganuga develops greed by studying the scriptures, and after he has developed that mood, after he has developed that attraction for that particular devotee, how he continue to grow in his Raganuga sadhana? He continues to grow in his Raganuga sadhana only by reading the scriptures more. But now the reading of scriptures is much more specific, much more focused. He understands that he is attracted toward this particular devotee. Now he will focus more on understanding the mood, internal mood of that devotee more and more by reading more specifically about that particular devotee. So we follow the regulative principles even after development of spontaneous love for Krishna. So we never leave regulative principles. So even if we are at the stage of Raganuga Bhakti or Bhava Bhakti or Prima Bhakti, uh, regulative principles we continue to follow uh, all the time. Now in this particular slide, what are we going to discuss? How do we achieve this qualification? Achieving this qualification. So what is the understanding of when do you think we can start Raganuga? What is the point in of time in our devotional life when we are ready for Raganuga? That is given by Srila Rupa Goswami in this slide. Uh, the greed or eagerness is not cheap or easy to come. Actually, it is not given in the slide, but it is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in Nectar of Devotion in his book, and also we see that being mentioned in the commentaries in Bhakti Samrat Sindhu. So, what is that? The greed is not cheap or easy to come. The greed usually does not awaken until the devotee achieves steadiness at the completion of anartha nivritti. So here a particular point of time is given in our devotional life when we are ready for Raganuga, and the point is anartha nivritti. Now many of you might be remembering the 9 stages of bhakti, the 9 stages of progression in bhakti. If for those who are forgetting what are the 9 stages, let me remind them. So Ado Shraddha, Tatha Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, then Nishtha, then Ruchi, then Asakti, then Bhav, and then Prem. So these are the 9 stages. So it starts with Shraddha, some little faith. Then after we have this faith, what do? We start associating with the devotees. When we start associating with the devotees, what happen in the association? We hear uh, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya. Bhajan Kriya means we start following those activities which the devotees are doing. Devotees are doing Kirtan, we are also doing Kirtan. Devotees are doing Shravanam, we are also doing Shravanam. Devotees are doing Archanam, we are also doing Archanam. So same activities we start to do. And then by doing these activities, what happens? Purification of the heart. Purification of heart means anartha nivritti. Anartha means kam, krodh, lobh, moh, mad, matsarya, lust, anger, pride, lust, anger, greed, pride, illusion, envy. So these starts to go down. So this is what is being mentioned here, that this greed usually does not awaken until the devotee achieves steadiness at the completion of anartha nivritti. So since till the point these anarthas are there in our heart, till the point these anarthas are there in our heart, we are not, we will not achieve steadiness. Sometimes we will fall, sometimes we will be uh, good, sometimes we will continue to do our sadhana very well for some time, but then something will happen, some impetus will come, some lure will come, and we will go down in our sadhana. So why we go down in our sadhana? Because anarthas are there. So what it is being mentioned here is that the devotee achieves steadiness, and what is the point of achieving steadiness is anartha nivritti. Steadiness actually means nishtha. Nishtha means strongly situated, firmly situated, in the devotional practice. So freedom from anarthas come at the stage of nishtha. Nishtha. So Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti. And Anartha Nivritti, then comes Nishtha. Then comes Ruchi. Ruchi means taste. And then comes Asakti. Asakti means now the intensity is increasing. And after the Asakti has increased to such a level, then appears Bhav. Then comes Bhav. Now we are talking here about Nishtha. So Bhava. So Nishtha comes before Bhav. Nishtha, Ruchi, and Asakti, these are the three stages which appear before Bhav and Prem. Here, one more thing we need to understand in the strictest sense, if we are really very strictly talking about when do we actually complete our Anartha Nivritti stage? Exactly. When there is absolutely zero Anarthas. So, in the strictest sense, slight anarthas remain until we attain prem. That is very strict definition of anartha nivritti. So until we attain prem, some minor anarthas are still there, but when it is being mentioned that that greed actually arise when there is completion of anartha nivritti. Completion of anartha nivritti means primarily, by and large, most of the anarthas and and to the most to the sufficient amount of degree, these anarthas have actually been removed. That is what it is actually being implied here when we are talking about achieving steadiness at the completion of anartha nivritti. Now there are three verses, 294, 295, and 296. These three verses are explaining how to practice Raganuga Bhakti. This particular part or this particular portion is relatively more technical. So please pay good attention to understand this. I will try to make it as simple as possible. So here in 294 verse, Rup Goswami is saying, live always in Vraja physically or mentally, while remembering the Vrindavan form of Krishna, then remembering his dear associates who have inclination for service like one's own, and absorbing oneself in hearing topics related to them. Three things. What are these three things? Remember Vrindavan form of Krishna. Okay. Second is remember his dear associate who have inclination for service like one's own. So, for example, I have a conjugal inclination towards Lord Krishna. I'm aspiring, I'm attracted towards one devotee in Vraja who is a gopi and who has a conjugal attraction towards Lord Krishna. And I want to develop that kind of mood for myself. Then I need to remember this particular associate also. So two remembrances are being mentioned here. One is the Vrindavan form of Krishna, and the second is the remembrance of that particular associate whose mood this Raganuga Bhakta want to develop. The third one is absorbing oneself in hearing topics related to them. And how we should develop that remembrance? By Shravanam. By Shravanam of specific topics related to them, specific topics. Now examples are given. Two examples are given which will make this point very clear. One who desires to serve in conjugal affection may meditate on the mood and service of a specific gopi for Kishore Krishna. Kishore Krishna. So why Kishore Krishna? Here remembering the Vrindavan form of Krishna. Vrindavan form of Krishna. So Kishore Krishna. Kishore Krishna means when Krishna is already have attained some adolescence. Adolescence means above maybe a certain age, like maybe in teens, 11-year, 12-year, 13-year, like that. So he's rather grown up, and the gopi or the Vrajavasi gopis or other any other devotee having that kind of a conjugal affection towards this Kishore Krishna. So what I will do is I will meditate on the Kishore Krishna form of Vrindavan, and I will also remember that particular specific gopi who has this particular conjugal affection towards Kishore Krishna. So two devotees, and then I will try to hear the topics related to them more and more. Then second example is also given. So second example is for parental affection. One who desires to serve with parental affection may meditate on Mother Yashoda for Kumar Krishna. Kumar Krishna. Kumar Krishna means Krishna is relatively young now. Uh, Mother Yashoda dresses Kumar Krishna. Maybe he's 6 years of age or 5 years of age. So Mother Yashoda is uh, bathing Krishna out of maternal affection, like that. So I will remember Kumar Krishna. The Vrindavan form of Krishna will be Kumar Krishna, and my remembrance will also be for Mother Yashoda. And I will like to hear the pastimes of Mother Yashoda and Krishna. So that is the practice how it will work. So three things: remembering a specific form of Krishna, remembering the devotee whose mood the Raganuga Bhakta want to develop, and how to develop that mood by hearing specific topics related to that devotee in relation with Lord Krishna. That is how the verse number 294 is trying to explain how to practice Raganuga Bhakti. So this is mainly about remembrance and Shravanam. Then comes the second part. This is 295 from Bhakti Samrat Sindhu, where it says how to uh, do service in Sadhak Roop and Siddha Roop. This particular verse is a little technical. So the previous verse was about remembrance and Shravanam. Now, remembrance and Shravanam need to follow by some seva, some service. And how to do that service? How to do that service? That is being mentioned here. So it says, verse number 295, Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi tad bhava lipsuna karya braja lokanusarataha braja lokanusarataha. Seva sadhak rupena. One should serve Krishna externally in one's sadhak roop, and siddha rupena cha atrahi, and internally in one's siddha roop. Tad bhava lipsuna karya, with a desire for a particular bhav. Vraja loka anusarataha, following the particular Brajvasi. So there are four items here. One is how to do this service. So service has to be done in two ways: externally and internally. Externally means doing service with body. Internally means doing service by developing a certain kind of mood. So with our mind, with our mental or with our mental faculty, that is internal. Now one should serve Krishna externally in one's sadhak roop and internally in one's siddha roop. So I will explain you what is meant by sadhak roop and siddha roop. With a desire to for a particular bhav, a particular emotion, and these emotions we have discussed quite quite at large, like for example conjugal, or maybe parental, or maybe friendly, like that, with a desire for a particular bhav and following a particular Vrajvasi. So it could be Mother Yashoda, it could be a gopi, it could be maybe a friend of Lord Krishna, maybe Madhu Mangal, maybe Subala, etc., etc. So like that. Now coming to explanation of what is meant by sadhak roop and siddha roop. So residents of Vraja simultaneously exist in two manifestations. One is called as sadhak and another one is called as siddha. Now example is given here is Roop Goswami. So Roop Goswami, we understand that he was a very exalted Vaishnava saint who was there on this earth planet, some say 500 years ago. That's how we understand Srila Rupa Goswami. But Srila Rupa Goswami actually is a resident of Vraja. Actually is a resident of Vraja. And what is the form of Srila Rupa Goswami in Vraja? His form is Rupa Manjari. His form is Rupa Manjari. So Rupa Manjari, and who are Manjaris? Manjaris are like gopis are serving Lord Krishna directly. Manjaris are actually serving the gopis. Manjaris are helping the gopis in their pastimes with Lord Krishna. So those are Manjaris. So Rup Goswami is in this planet Earth. When he came, he was uh, considered as a sadhaka, and when he's considered in his spiritual form in the spiritual sky in Vrindavan, his form is Rup Manjari. So his form on this planet Earth is known as Sadhak form, Sadhak Roop, and his form in the spiritual sky is considered as Siddha Roop. Now, once again, look at this verse. One should serve Krishna externally in one's Sadhak Roop. So, by body, by our hands, by our activities, how are we going to serve Krishna? We are going to serve Krishna like Rup Goswami. But internally, what our mood should be? Internally, our mood should be like that of Rup Manjari. So that is how it is being mentioned. So how do we do service? We do service externally as sadhak in sadhak roop of that particular devotee, and internally in siddha roop of that particular devotee. And how do we understand uh, how do we serve as sadhak roop and how do we serve as siddha roop? So this is again once again emphasizing on those points which I just now mentioned. Service in sadhak group means following the activities externally with the body. Uh, What is the example? Example is one who aspires the mood and service of Srila Rup Goswami would follow the footsteps of his sadhana as mentioned in Shad Goswami Ashtakam. Shad Goswami Ashtakam. So Shad Goswami Ashtakam is a poem written by one of the exalted Vaishnava acharyas. But in that poem, we understand how Srila Rup Goswami would do his sadhana, how he would really very meticulously would chant, keeping track of each and every syllable, keeping track of each and every holy name he would recite. He would count very dedicatedly, very meticulously. He would count like a person who would keep his money very nicely, very meticulously in banks, in his own house, etc., counting each and every note. Similarly, Rup Goswami, whose sadhana standards were very high. So this particular devotee, this Raganuga devotee, how he is going to serve by body, he would actually read about how Rup Goswami would do his sadhana, and will try to follow that sadhana standard as much as possible. And how these explanations of his sadhana are given, these are mentioned in uh, poems like Shad Goswami Ashtakam. So this is how externally with body sadhak roop service is there. Then siddha roop, follow the activity internally, that is mentally in our mind. An example of it, one who aspires the mood and service of Srila Rup Goswami would internally meditate on the activities of Sri Rupa Manjari. Internally, our mind, in our emotions, how how we should develop those emotions? By meditating. By meditating means by focusing our mind on the activities of Srila Rup Manjari. Now here we are not talking about Rup Goswami. Rup Manjari is the Siddha Rupa. Siddha Rupa, as described by Raghunath Das Goswami in Vraj Vilas Stava. Vraj Vilas Stava. So this is Shad Goswami Ashtakam is talking about Rup Goswami. Similarly, Vraj Vilas Stava, it is also a poetry written about Srila Rupa Manjari. So uh, that is how we will internally develop our mood, and externally we will do our service. Externally we will do our service with our body by following Srila Rup Goswami. Internally we will develop that mood of Srila Rup Manjari by actually following poetry like Vraj Vilas Stava. So this is, so in 294 we discussed about remembrance of Krishna in Vrindavan, remembrance of his dear associate and hearing about them. And in 295 we discussed about how are we going to serve. So service has two components, external and internal. External, we need to follow the sadhak roop. Internal, we need to follow the siddha roop. That is the crux of 294 and 295. Now coming to 296. Okay, before we come to 296, there is a small warning given by Srila Prabhupada, and also something similar is mentioned in the commentary of Bhakti Samrat Sindhu. And what that warning is about one pranali, one prakriya, one process known as Siddha Pranali. And this prakriya or this Siddha Pranali process is actually followed by some devotees. But and these devotees say that they are following the Siddha Pranali, this process, quoting this particular verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 295. That verse they quote, and but they quote this verse, but they understand this verse in a wrong way. They misinterpret this verse, and since they misinterpret this verse, their practice is also deviated. Their practice is also, the practice they follow is not correct. Actually, it is a mockery of what this verse actually mentions. And who are these class of devotees? These are known as Prakrit Sahajiyas. Prakrit Sahajiya. Sahajiya means taking things for granted, taking things to be very cheap, very easy. Prakrit means because they take these things very cheap, they actually indulge themselves into some materialistic activity, materialistic sadhana. So these Prakrit Sahajiyas follow this process by misinterpreting this verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is this 295 verse. So they deviate from this verse in two respects. They deviate in two respects. What are those? First deviation is they prematurely imagine one's eternally perfect spiritual form. However, our Siddha Rupa gradually develops when our heart is purified. So we discussed short while ago that this Raganuga greed, we discussed Raganuga means, qualification of Raganuga means one should have that greed. And then we also mentioned that this greed develops gradually. Once it is at a lower level, small amount of greed or some eagerness, some attraction, then it gradually develops. But what happens in these Prakrit Sahajiyas, they think that they are at the level of those Siddharupa devotees right now. They are at the topmost level. They think themselves of Roop Manjari, that they are Roop Manjari. They are actually Roop Manjari, and they need to behave like Roop Manjari. However, that is not correct. That is a deviation. Then the second deviation is they misinterpret the word Vrajloka to be for residents of Vrindavan exclusively as Siddha Rupa and not Sadhak Rupa. So they don't give any regard for Sadhak Rupa. Now here the Sadhak Rupa was Srila Rupa Goswami. And when we are focusing on Sadhak Rupa, we focus on the service that Srila Rupa Goswami did. He did very meticulous sadhana, he did everything very, very meticulously, and so on. We follow that. But this particular Prakrit Sahajiyas who are following Siddha Pranali, which is a fallacious misinterpretation, they misinterpret the word Vrajlok. Now, here word Vrajlok comes where from where? Vrajlok Anusarataha. Vrajlok Anusarataha means those devotees who are in Vraja, they need to follow these devotees who are in Vraja. And they need to follow these devotees who are in Vraja. And they need to follow these devotees who are in Vraja.
Prabhuji, we lost your voice.
Yeah, we cannot hear you.
Prabhuji, we cannot hear you.
I think his internet got disconnected, I think.
Ah.
I think his internet got disconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So the intensity was so great. The wavelengths were so strong and so high temperature that it got disconnected.
Prabhuji, we cannot hear you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Now it is clear.
Okay, till what point I discussed and what point we got disconnected?
I think just a couple of minutes back, Prabhu.
Second deviation from.
Yeah, second
Second-
deviation. Yeah.
Second deviation. Okay, okay. So you heard the first deviation, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
let me share my screen. Sorry about it. I don't know what went wrong.
Sadhak and Siddh.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what I was trying to say was that these Prakrit Sahajiyas, they misinterpret this particular verse from Bhakti Samrat Sindhu. And in the first deviation, what they do is they prematurely imagine that they are actually having a perfect spiritual form, like the Siddha Rupa. So
Prabhu, you are not sharing the screen. I think is not.
okay,
We cannot see the screen.
just 1 minute. Okay. I hope now it is
Yes.
visible.
Yes. Now. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So what I was mentioning was about the deviations. Huh?
You have to do that Siddha Pranali, the fallacious interpretation.
Now you are able to see the screen.
Yes, yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Okay. So
Yes,
first deviation we
can.
had discussed, in which these Prakrit Sahajiyas, they actually consider themselves as Roop Manjari. That they are actually at that particular level, they have perfected their spiritual form. And the second deviation is that they misinterpret the word Vrajaloka to be the residents of Vrindavan, exclusively as Siddha Roop. Now, what does it mean? I was explaining by this word Vrajlok, from where this word Vrajlok comes in the last line of this verse number 295. Vrajlok Anusarataha. Anusarata means by following the particular Vrajvasi. Now here from this verse we understand that we need to follow that Vrajvasi in two different ways. One is externally in Sadhak Roop and another one is internally in Siddha Roop. But what these Prakrit Sahajiyas do is they don't consider Sadhak Roop at all. They only follow the Siddha Roop. So there are two deviations. They think that they are quickly they have attained the Siddha Roop. There is no gradual development. They are already there. And the second one is they don't have any consideration about Sadhak Roop. They are all in Siddha Roop. Now, because of this misunderstanding, how do they practice this particular aspect? There will be, you will see there will be men dressed in sari, jewelry, etc., making a show of imitating the behavior of gopis without internal purification. So they start behaving like gopis, and they start to do all kind of nonsense things, because internally they are not purified, and because internally they are not purified, they actually do all kind of materialistic activities. So externally they start to behave like gopis. They will dress in sari, they will dress in jewelry, and so on. But that is not the intent of this particular verse. Intent of this particular verse is that we need to do our service with body externally like Srila Rupa Goswami, and internally we need to develop that service mood of Shri Rupa Manjari in Vrindavan. Not that we need to behave and dress like Shri Rupa Manjari in this particular when we are practicing Raganuga Bhakti. So that is what Siddha Pranali actually means. So Srila Prabhupada has cautioned us that this verse is misinterpreted by some class of devotees, and we should be aware of it. We should be careful about it. Then the final verse comes 296. It tells us about that while following Raganuga Bhakti, actually we don't stop following the rules and regulations of Vedi Bhakti. So it is still in the classification of under the umbrella of sadhan bhakti. It is still under the umbrella of doing bhakti with some rules, with some sadhan. So one should accept the angas of Vedi bhakti like hearing and chanting, and surrendering to the Guru, which are favorable to one's cultivation of Raganuga Bhakti, cultivation to one's own sentiments. Now, what is the difference then? If we are saying that Vedi Bhakta also follow the limbs of Bhakti like Shravan and Kirtan, and Raganuga Bhaktas also follow the limbs of Bhakti like Shravan and Kirtan, what is the difference? The difference is here. Raganuga Bhaktas are also supposed to follow the limbs of Vedi Bhakti, but with discretion. There's some specialization now comes into picture, and examples are given. Raganuga Bhakta does not abandon regular hearing and chanting, but focuses on hearing and chanting topics that are specifically nourishing his that specifically nourish his particular serving mood. So in general, we do Shravan and Kirtan, but we do Shravan and Kirtan for many things. We will hear Bhagavad Gita, we will hear Bhagavatam, we will hear Chaitanya Charitamrit, we will hear all kind of classes. That is mainly Vedi Bhakti. But when a particular devotee is at a Raganuga stage, and at Raganuga stage, his Shravan and Kirtan becomes very specific. Specific means it is restricted now, or not restricted the word, but it is actually largely focusing on hearing and chanting about topics that specifically nourish his particular serving mood. And I gave you the example: if somebody wants to develop uh, attracted by, for example, Shri Roop Manjari, then he need to follow the externally the sadhana of Rup Goswami, internally the seva and the service mood of Shri Roop Manjari, and hear about Rup Goswami, hear about Rup Manjari, hear about the sweet pastimes of Rup Goswami with Lord Krishna, hear about sweet pastimes of Rup Manjari with the gopis in the Vrindavan, like that. So that is how the hearing and chanting is still there, but hearing and chanting becomes very specific. Similarly, another example is given is worshipping the deity in parental mood. Now, deity worship can be done in many forms. You can worship Lord Krishna as Radha Krishna, or Rukmani Dwarkadhish, or maybe Lakshmi Narayan, or Sita Ram, or Lakshmi Narasimha. There are many ways we can worship the deity. But a particular mood, say for example, a particular devotee wants to develop this mood of parenthood, or as a father of Lord Krishna, then he would worship Bal Roop of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna in the form of Balak, in the form of a child. So that is the worshipping the deity in the parental mood. So that is the second example. And he would hear the pastimes of Lord Nanda Maharaj with Krishna, Mother Yashoda with Krishna, like that. Now, taking the discussion to next topic. Now we talk about Kamanuga Bhakti and Kamanuga Bhakti types. So far we have discussed Raganuga Bhakti of two types, Kamanuga and Sambandhanuga. Kamanuga is mainly related with conjugal love. Sambandhanuga is mainly related with friendship and parenthood. Now Kamanuga has two different types, and one is Sambhog Echamai, and the second one is Tadbhav Ikchatmika. Sambhog Ikchamai and Tadbhav Ikchatmika. So Kamanuga has two further sub branches. Sambhog Ikchamai means, we will discuss here. I will discuss this point little later. Let us see what is Sambhog Ikchamai. Sambhog Ikchamai means striving to serve Krishna as do those who directly meet him in conjugal love. Example, gopis. There is a direct union, there is a direct meeting between the devotee and Lord Krishna, like gopis. So the gopis would dance together with Krishna, gopis would sometimes embrace Krishna. So that is something like directly coming in contact with Krishna, both mentally and physically. So striving to serve Krishna as do those who directly meet him in conjugal love. Example is gopis. And tad bhav ikchatmika means indirectly. Indirectly means striving not to meet Krishna directly, but to assist a particular gopi and thus directly experience her loving mood through service and appreciation. Now, what this particular type is, that, for example, manjaris. Now, manjaris don't come directly in connection with Krishna. Manjaris will assist the gopis. Manjari will assist the gopis. So they will assist the gopis meeting with Krishna. They will assist the gopis having that direct connection with Krishna. And when they do this service for these gopis, they feel a lot of intense joy. Sometimes they see the joy, seeing the joy of the gopis. So when they see, when gopis are coming in connection with Krishna, and the gopis are feeling ecstatic love for Krishna, so when these manjaris, they see that ecstatic love of the gopis, they also feel ecstatic love, they also feel that they also experience that loving mood, and through service and through appreciation. So that is tad bhav ikchatmika, and it is one is sambhog ikchamai. So that is the two different types of Kamanuga Bhakti. So example of Sambhog Ikchamai is gopis. Example of Tad Bhav Ikchatmika is Manjaris. Now, what is the qualification of Kamanuga Bhakti? The qualification of Kamanuga Bhakti is to develop longing for the bhav of the gopis after seeing the sweetness in the deity forms of Krishna and the gopis, or after hearing about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. In the Padma Puran, it is said that even men can attain this type of bhakti. So, example is given. Now, before we come to the example, let us see. Seeing the sweetness in the deity form of Krishna and gopis. So, what happens is when we go to the temple and we see the deity form of Radha and Krishna. Now, Srimati Radharani is also a gopi. But it is a topmost gopi. So, we see the deity form of Radha and Krishna. When we see the deity form of Radha and Krishna, the emotion that arises in our heart is how sweet is the relationship between Srimati Radhika and Lord Krishna. Such sweet relationship. That kind of a bhav, that kind of a emotion that comes in our heart. Hmm. Here, seeing means actually that emotion actually comes in our heart. And how does this emotion come in our heart? Actually, the emotion come in our heart because after hearing about Krishna's pastime with the gopis. So when we hear a lot of pastimes about Krishna and Radha, then that kind of mood, that kind of vision, actually we may develop when we see the deity form of Radha and Krishna. Uh, In Padma Puran, it is said that even men can attain this bhakti. So it is not only restricted to females. It even men can desire to attain this type of bhakti. And we'll give you an example in a short while. Here, so Kamanuga Bhakti is mainly developed by worshipping the deities of Radha Krishna and hearing Krishna's pastime with the gopis. So here Bhakti Samrat Sindhu verse 300 says, seeing the sweetness in the deity forms of Krishna and gopis. So what generally we do, we worship deity of Radha and Krishna. If we are trying to develop that bhakti, we worship Radha and Krishna. And what is our main focus of hearing? Our main focus of hearing is Krishna's pastime with the gopis. That is our main focus of hearing. So this is the qualification of Kamanuga Bhakti. We need to worship Radha and Krishna, and we need to hear the pastimes with the gopis. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, it was mentioned in Padma Puran, it is said that even men can attain this bhakti. So a reference is given here. Uh, Previously, all the sages living in Dandakaranya forest, who after seeing Lord Ram desired enjoyment with his form, attained forms of women and appeared in Gokul. Attaining the Lord by that calm, they became liberated from the ocean of the material world. So, in the pastimes of Lord Ramchandra, when Lord Ramchandra was visiting Dandakaranya forest, so there were many sages. And these sages have heard about the relationship of gopis and Krishna, and they aspired for that kind of mood, that kind of devotion. So those sages were something like, you can say, at the level of maybe Raganuga Bhaktas, because they aspired for that kind of mood. And when they saw Lord Ramchandra, they actually in their mind they wanted to have that kind of relationship with Lord Ramchandra. But Lord Ramchandra was Ek Patni Vrat. So in his mind, Lord Ramchandra gave sanction to these sages of Dandakaranya forest that next life when I appear as Lord Krishna, then we can have that kind of relationship. Then I will fulfill your desire. Then these devotees, these sages, they took birth uh, in the womb of these gopis, having these feminine forms, and in that pastimes, in that incarnation of Lord Krishna, they actually satisfied their desire, attained forms of women and appeared in Gokul. So attaining the Lord by that calm, by that desire, they became liberated from the ocean of material world. So the idea is that even men can aspire to become gopis. Although loving Krishna in conjugal mood entails feminine sentiments on behalf of the devotee, but it is not restricted only to females. So that is what we are trying to explain to you. Destination of Vaidhi Bhakta desiring conjugal relationship. Now, this is something, a detail that Rup Goswami adds in verse number 304 and 303. What he's saying is, if a Vaidhi Bhakta desires an amorous relationship with Krishna, but not like that of the gopis, he or she will attain in future, not as quickly as in Raganuga Bhakti, the position of Queen of Krishna in Dwarka. Now, the detail that Rup Goswami is entering here, adding here is that if there is a devotee who is practicing Vaidhi Sadhan Bhakti, now we are talking mainly about Raganuga Sadhan Bhakti in this chapter, but Rup Goswami is saying that imagine or understand that if somebody is not at a Raganuga level, he is at a Vaidhi Bhakti level, and in Vaidhi Bhakti level, he develops this desire of having some conjugal relationship or some amorous relationship with Krishna, uh, but not like that of the gopis. Not like that of the gopis. So I want that relationship, but not like that of the gopis. Then he or she will attain in future the position of a queen of Krishna in Dwarka. So that is one additional detail uh, Rup Goswami is adding here in 303. And next he follows by an example. He's saying the saintly sons of Agni performed Vaidhi Bhakti, achieved bodies of women, and attained Lord Vasudev as their husband and not lover. So Mahakurma Purana. So love conjugal relationship with Krishna is also of two types. One is Parakiya and another one is Swakiya. Swakiya means a formal wedding is there, like wife of Krishna in Dwarka, the queens of Krishna in Dwarka. But Parakiya means there is no formal marriage, but out of marriage that relationship is happening, and that is called Parakiya Bhav. So here, the example of Vaidhi Bhakta desiring amorous relationship but not in the mood of gopis. What is the destination? In Mahakurma Puran, it is mentioned the saintly sons of Agni performed Vaidhi Bhakti and they achieved the bodies of women and attained Lord Vasudev as their husband. Husband means Swakiya Bhav. Like it is mentioned here, queens of Dwarka, queens of Krishna in Dwarka. But that is additional detail being mentioned here. Uh, now we have discussed about Kamanuga Bhakti. Similarly, we have a discussion around Sambandhanuga Bhakti, and there is only one slide. The way you understand Kamanuga, you can understand Sambandhanuga Bhakti as well. Like Kamanuga Bhakti, Sambandhanuga Bhakti is also two types. What? The first aspires for direct parenthood or friendship with Krishna. The second aspires for service and appreciation of Krishna's parents and friends. Like Kamanuga Bhakti was of two types, Sambhog Ichhamai and Tad Bhav Ichhamai. Uh, Similarly, Sambandhanuga Bhakti is also of two types. One is directly serving Krishna as father or mother. The second one is indirectly serving as Krishna's father and mother. So indirectly means serving that particular devotee who is actually or developing the mood of that devotee who's serving Lord Krishna's father in the spiritual sky, like that. Now here one warning is given: thinking oneself to be Nanda and Subala. It is Sambandhanuga. So the examples are given of Nanda or Subala. Thinking oneself to be Nanda or Subala is offensive. But following Nanda or Subala and cherishing the idea of being Krishna's father or friend is desirable. Now, what is the warning given here is, while practicing Sambandha Nuga Bhakti, if somebody starts to consider himself as Nand Maharaj himself, then that is an offense. So we are not considering ourselves as Nanda Maharaj, or we are not considering ourselves Subala directly. Actually, we are following into their footsteps. We are following Nanda or Subala and cherishing the idea of being Krishna's father or friend. That is okay. But thinking oneself to be Nanda Maharaj or thinking oneself to be Subala, that is an offense. That one should avoid. It is same something like Mayavad. So in Mayavad, what happens is, and then I am Krishna. I can become Krishna. I become Krishna. That is Mayavad. But in devotion, it is not I am Krishna. It is actually I am servant of Krishna. So similarly here also, I am following Nanda and Subala, but I am not Nanda and I am not Subala. If we are thinking that I am Nanda or I am Subala, that is an offense. Example of Sambandhanuga Sadhan Bhakti. In the Skanda Puran, there is a story of an old man residing in Hastinapur who desired Krishna as his beloved son. So Rup Goswami is now giving one example directly from Skanda Puran. So this is coming from Skanda Puran. There is a story of a man residing in Hastinapur who desired Krishna as his beloved son. The old man was instructed by Narad Muni to follow in the footsteps of Nanda Maharaj, and thus he achieved success. So what did he do? What this person do? This person took Bal Krishna as as the deity. He would worship Bal Krishna in the deity form, and that's how he developed that mood of Nanda Maharaj, and thus he achieved success. So this is verse number 307. Now, final slide. Srila Rup Goswami and both Srila Prabhupada ends this chapter by mentioning that Raganuga Bhakti in some Vaishnav Sampradaya, specifically the Vallabh Sampradaya, is also known as Pushti Marg to indicate Raganuga Sadhana. Like we discussed in the Vedi Sadhan Bhakti, that in Vallabh Sampradaya, Vedi Sadhan Bhakti is known as Maryada Marg. So similarly, Raganuga Sadhan Bhakti in Vallabh Sampradaya is known as Pushti Marg. And why? What is meant by Pushti Marg? Pushti means nourishing. Such development of sentiment nourishes devotional service to the highest standard. So it is called path of nourishment or Pushti Marg. Generally, devotees in Gujarat worship Bal Krishna following the Pushti Marg. So that is the alternate terminology. And with that, I will like to conclude the discussion on chapter 16 on Raganuga Bhakti. All glories to Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. All glories to Srila Rup Goswami and Srila Prabhupada. Now we can have some discussion, private discussion on this particular topic. I hope the class was interesting. Although the topic is exalted, but I still find the class or the topic very, very interesting, very, very sweet at times. I hope similar mood you also have after hearing it. Any question, any doubt, please we can discuss now.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
All glories to my Guruji. Today I have many questions, but as it's very late, I will not ask. Only I will ask because there is perfection and practice. There is a Uttam Bhakti, sadhana and Sid, and there is a only one thing I will touch about greed. You said we should have greed in Raganuga Bhakti. I have a little question whether it's right or wrong, whether we can have thirst and hunger.
That is same. Thirst and greed is same. Yeah.
प्यास और
सॉरी प्रभु आपका ऑडियो डिस्कनेक्ट हो रहा है. Audio is getting disconnected, so I cannot hear it properly. Can you repeat? Okay, maybe I'm not sure what is going not correct at Prabhu's end. If there is any other question, meanwhile, we can take that. I think
So
Prabhu has
Prabhuji,
disconnected.
Prabhu, lot of definitions and lot of terminology was here
Haha.
related to the Raganuga and then many types
Hmm.
also.
Hmm.
So is it something a flow chart or something can we make and then understand in a much better way for this
Okay.
Raganuga, something like that? Typically making.
Uh, what I suggest, Prabhuji, if
Hmm,
you once again listen to this lecture and follow the slides
okay,
and maybe come up with some specific question, I can try to help you there. Flow
okay,
chart,
okay.
flow chart actually is simple. See,
Hmm,
let me give you Raganuga. In order to understand Raganuga, we need to understand Ragatmika. That is clear.
okay. Yes, yes.
Ragatmika is same as Prema Bhakti. That is clear.
Hmm, clear,
Details of Prema Bhakti we are going to study in chapter 19. That is clear,
clear.
right? Now, Raganuga means following those devotees who are actually Ragatmikas,
Hmm,
correct? Now,
yeah.
development of this greed, the qualification of Raganuga is have that kind of greed, that kind of
Hmm,
liking,
hmm,
correct?
okay. Yeah.
Now that develops gradually. Is it understandable? It
Yes,
doesn't
yes, it
happen
is. Yeah.
fast. It doesn't happen in a step function. It happens slowly, gradually, and then
Mm-hmm.
uh, so now this Raganuga Bhakti is of two types. How many types is Ragatmika Bhakti?
Again, it is two types,
What are those two types?
the Kama Roop and the Sambandha Roop.
Sambandha Roop. So Kamanuga Bhakti is also two types. What is those? Kamanuga and Sambandhanuga.
Sambandhanuga. Correct, correct.
So in
Okay.
Kamanuga, the devotee is following who? The Kamarupa devotee. In
Mm-hmm.
Sambandhanuga, the devotee is following Sambandharupa devotee.
The relation type. Okay.
The flavor of relationship is different. In Kamanuga, it is
Mm-hmm.
conjugal. In Sambandhanuga, it is parental or
Parental.
friendly.
Parental. Yeah, yeah.
Correct. So now this is the qualification, and then it mentions about how to follow this. Follow means you need to specifically dedicate now to develop that mood of Raganuga, either Kamanuga or Sambandhanuga. You need to focus mainly on those kind of devotees. So your world of
Mm-hmm.
hearing, chanting, etc. actually restricts to those specific pastimes and so on.
Okay,
And then
okay.
we discussed about Siddha Pranali. Siddha
Hmm.
Pranali means you need to practice by Sadhak Rupa and you need to practice by Siddha Rupa.
Mm-hmm.
Practice by Sadhak Rupa is done externally with your senses, with your body.
Yeah.
Practice of Siddha Rupa has to be done with the mind, internally.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that is what Sadhak Rupa and Siddha Rupa is there. Now, Siddha Pranali means these people actually misunderstand it. They think themselves that they are perfect Siddhas of
Mm.
Vraja, and then they actually start behaving like that. They will wear sari, etc., and all that. They do all kind of
Okay. False
nonsensical
kind of
activities, false
imitations.
activities,
Yeah.
imitations.
Yeah.
So this is the whole chapter actually. That's all.
So here, can a common man achieve this Raganuga Bhakti? Means we can still achieve this or?
Yeah, the common man can achieve this. Certainly,
Okay.
there are devotees who have achieved these kind of levels in by following these practices. They will not, you will not recognize them because externally they will actually behave like Vedi bhaktas. They will follow all their
Mm-hmm.
regulations, chanting, hearing, everything. But internally, they are actually Raganugas. They are,
Okay, okay,
yeah.
okay.
So now the point is we are not talking about how to identify them and so on.
Yeah, yeah.
Like now, I will give a little connection with Bhagavad Gita also. In Bhagavad Gita, we were talking about uh, Brahma Bhuta stage.
Yes, yes,
You remember Brahma Bhuta stage? Brahma
yes.
Bhuta Prasanna Atma na Shochati na Kangshati. So Brahma Bhuta stage, we defined that when the anarthas are gone,
Hmm.
lust, anger, greed, pride, delusion, envy, they are gone. So Raganuga stage actually corresponds to a good extent to that Brahma Bhuta stage.
Okay, okay.
Brahma Bhuta stage. That's where it
Mm-hmm.
actually corresponds to. Because what did we talk today? Anarthas are generally gone, and
Gone.
the
Yeah.
person is fixed at the level of nishtha. It's more fixed now, nishtha. Then comes
Okay.
asakti, then comes ruchi, then comes bhav, then comes prema.
So
it is all,
so this is
yeah.
so this is also a stepwise process, Prabhu. So how then this spontaneous we discuss? This is something like spontaneous, but again, this is coming stepwise, correct? So how do we?
No, it is not like, it is not like that. If you achieve, for example, nishtha stage, or maybe say, if you have achieved, or if you are at the level of uh, bhajan kriya, if you are at the level of bhajan kriya, that does not mean that you have you are left sadhu sangha. Sadhu sangha still goes on more strongly. And then when you come to the level of bhajan anartha nivritti, that does not mean that you leave bhajan kriya or you leave sadhu sangha. No. Similarly, when you come at the level of nishtha, anarthas are primarily gone, more or less gone. But you continue to do that. You still continue to do bhajan kriya and so on. So achieving stage by stage does not mean that you leave the previous stages. The stages become more the, like for example, the shraddha becomes even more intense.
Okay.
So you continue to develop this until your last stage, like prema. Actually, in prema also there are multiple divisions. We are, I mean, now these are very exalted topics. They are more advanced level topics. There are even stages in prema also.
Okay.
Different prema.
Okay, Prabhu.
Now we will
Yeah,
discuss more about these things in our subsequent classes.
Okay, Prabhu. Okay, thank
But
you.
but did you find this interesting?
Yes, it was. It was interesting, but got confused with so many of
No,
sub
you need to
classes. Yeah.
sit peacefully, read the
Hmm.
slides, make some notes, hear the class once again in case you still get confused,
Yeah.
and then come up with questions and clarify your doubts.
Okay. Okay.
Is still
Done.
something remaining? We will do something about it then. I
Okay.
think it
Okay.
should be. It is not that difficult not to understand, at least
Yeah.
theoretically.
Correct. But the
Yeah.
last you explained that division wise, that gave more clarity on this. One by one, I think we have to look into it.
Yeah. Next,
Stepwise.
more clarity will come when we will summarize this class in the next class. So hear that part
Okay.
also, because
Okay.
everything will be summarized in maybe 5-10 minutes. It will give you a much more clarity how everything is related.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So
Prabhuji,
yes, Ishwar Prabhu.
you have been excellent as usual, but certainly we have to strain our brain, and I think
Yes.
even then we are still dangling.
Yeah. I can understand. This
Hopefully,
is so.
Prabhuji has asked what I wanted to ask, so I am totally satisfied that the efforts will be on our part to understand and bring forth things which are still not understandable.
Yeah. So the next opportunity will come when we will summarize the class, and
Right,
another
right.
opportunity will come when we will present the quiz, when we will do the quiz.
That's right. Right.
So
Thank you very
it is there is a element built in our classes to tackle that kind of a issue.
quite right.
A
Okay.
lot of alarms have rang in the brain now. Yeah. A lot of red lights have started blinking now. So that is what. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Ji. Okay. Okay. Jivan Prabhu, you are okay?
I am perfectly okay. Actually, today I pre-prepared for today's
Sorry?
class.
Sorry?
I pre-prepared for today's class.
Oh, you pre-read it?
Yeah, pre-read it, and some points were clear. When I heard your lecture, things were not clear. So
Okay.
today's thing, I have no this thing. And
Okay.
finally, when you are doing summarizing, perfectly okay.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So I am
Good.
actually, I actually pre-prepared with that Upadeshamrita Subodhini, then BRS, everything I took it, and Jiva Goswami's commentary, all the things I read. Some doubts were there. So I marked those points. Then you put the slides and explained, everything became very clear. So
Very clear. Okay.
prepared daily today. So
Sorry?
certain amount of pre-preparation. No?
Yeah, yeah,
But
okay.
today,
Yeah, that helps. That helps. Yeah,
that's
certainly.
helpful, very much.
Yeah.
So
So
today
those devotees who could not pre-read it, now they can do that pro-read, not
yeah,
pre-read, but pro-read.
they can do that. Once if they hear the
Yeah,
thing along with the slides,
yeah,
if they read it again, if they hear the thing, everything will be clear.
yeah, yeah.
Actually, I mean, sort of a concentration required, and we must. I mean, suppose something is not understood, we can hear the lecture again and then get
Yeah.
our doubts clarified.
Yes, yes, yes.
Today it was very clear for me. No
Okay,
problem.
okay.
Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Okay,
Today
okay.
it
Thank
was
you.
very this
Thank
thing,
you,
because
Ji.
last class I had the experience. So today
Yeah.
I prepared for 2
Okay,
hours. I
okay,
prepared and it was very easy for me.
okay, okay. Okay, Ji.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Ji. Thank you then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will